I've lived by this creek my whole damn life. 3 generations of my family listening to that water talk. But that night, it didn't talk. It exploded. By sunrise, the fancy new HOA development downstream was completely underwater, and by noon, their lawyer was standing on my porch, telling me that I personally owed them $2.8 million. Well, my trail cam had a very different story to tell about how that disaster started. You spend enough years living next to a river, you start to understand it the way some folks understand engines or horses. Bear Creek isn't wide, and she sure ain't loud, but she's steady. One of those old, ancient stretches of water that's been winding through this valley since before Montana had paved roads or proper street signs. My father used to say she had a personality, and my grandfather swore she had a memory. And after all these years, I'm not so sure he was wrong. I grew up with her, learned to fish in her, learned to respect her, and the first thing you learn about a mountain creek is this: she doesn't belong to you. You belong to the land, and the land gives you the creek. That's the deal. Always has been. Most mornings, I'm Daniel Hoggard, and I'm up before the sun even thinks about rising. I pour a cup of coffee so strong it could honestly wake the dead, lean on the fence rail, and just listen. Folks from the city think Montana is quiet because they don't know what they're listening for. Out here, quiet is just another word for alive. You hear the wind through the old cottonwoods, the cattle shifting hooves, the brush whispering with something wild moving inside it. And underneath all of it, the creek, steady, patient, dragging itself across stone like it's been doing since time first bothered to keep track. But this past spring, something felt different. Not immediately dangerous, not dramatic, just wrong in a way only someone who's lived on the same dirt for 50+ years can truly sense. The sky felt heavy. The air tasted metallic. Even the birds were off their rhythm, chattering at hours they had no business being awake. The storms came like soldiers, one after another, stacking over the ridge. Rain didn't fall so much as pour, sheets of water pounding the ground until the fields turned dark and glossy. I've seen that creek rise, seen her angry, seen her calm down again just as quick. She always had a rhythm, and I trusted it the way some men trust their tractors. Still, I did what I always do. Walked the northern pasture, checked the culverts, cleared debris from the ditches, reinforced the old stone spillway my grandfather built long before anyone thought of HOAs or gated communities down the valley. Ranch life doesn't reward optimism. It rewards preparation. The animals were the first to really tip me off. Cattle don't spook easy, not mine anyway. But those nights, they kept lifting their heads like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. Ears twitching toward the hills, bodies shifting restlessly, the whole herd uneasy. Then came the night everything changed. It was close to midnight, rain hammering straight down, no wind, just the sky emptying itself onto the earth. I was sitting in my father's old rocking chair, watching the storm, and that's when the world cracked. A sharp, violent boom rolled through the valley, loud enough that the windows rattled, loud enough I felt it in my ribs. And I swear to God, that sound didn't belong to nature. Thunder rolls. It rumbles. It travels. But this hit like something solid giving way under intense pressure, like rock breaking, like ground being forced apart. I stood there staring into the dark. I remember muttering, that wasn't natural. But I didn't know what else to call it. So I filed it away in the back of my mind, like ranchers do with strange signs we can't explain yet. If I had known then what that sound truly was, what it would lead to, the lawsuits, the lies, the court hearings, maybe I would have grabbed my coat and gone looking for the source right then. But I didn't. I just listened to the rain, watched the creek swell, and waited for the morning. A warning had been given. I just hadn't learned how to hear it yet. Morning came slow and gray, the way it does after a night when the storm never really stops, just gets tired for a few hours. The first thing I noticed when I stepped outside was the smell. Wet earth, torn grass, that sharp mineral scent that tells you the ground took a beating. Bear Creek was swollen, but not wild. She was full, restless, pushing at her banks, but she hadn't spilled over, at least not on my side. The water was moving faster than I liked, though, rolling heavy, carrying branches, clumps of roots, pieces of brush that didn't belong there. That boom had bothered me more than I wanted to admit. It had a weight to it, the kind of weight you feel in your bones. I walked down to the lower pasture, Juniper, my old border collie, staying close to my heel. When I reached the old stone spillway, my grandfather's handiwork from the 1950s, I crouched down. They were solid. No breach. Not here. But something upstream had changed. When you've watched the same water run the same course your whole life, you notice when it moves with a different intention. I followed the bank. The deeper I walked, the more uneasy I felt. Not scared, just intensely aware. I finally saw the first real sign. A chunk of bank had collapsed. Not on my side, but farther upstream toward the ridge. Not big enough to explain the boom, but big enough to make me wonder if the land had started giving way long before the rain even started. I stood there, staring at the broken earth, listening to Bear Creek growl at the base of the cut. "Something spooked you," I whispered. Still, for all the signs, for all the uneasy instincts, there was nothing pointing directly back to me. Not yet. I made it back to the house, settled into my chair, and sipped my coffee. If only I'd known that while I was sitting there, letting the rain patter against the window, downstream, the folks at Crestview Heights HOA were already getting ready to put my name at the top of their blame list. They were literally drowning, and someone was about to decide that I was the easiest man in the valley to pin it on. News travels funny out here. It doesn't move fast. It just moves everywhere at the same time, like smoke slipping under every door. So, it didn't surprise me when my phone buzzed with a text from an old friend, Tom Delaney. "You seeing what's happening down at Crestview?" Then the second message, "They're flooded, bad. Folks saying it came from your side." Tom called next, his voice rough. "Daniel, it's a mess down here. Basement's full, roads washed out. Folks are saying the surge came straight from your channel." "My channel," I repeated, letting the words taste stupid in my mouth. "Tom, the creek's been in that same damn spot since your grandparents were in diapers. I don't have a channel. I've got a river I don't own." I know. Tom sighed heavily. "But Brenda Sterling is stirring folks up. She's saying your land redirected the flow." That made me laugh. One sharp exhale, all disbelief. Brenda? The same Brenda who thinks coyotes can be relocated with peppermint oil? That woman doesn't know enough about hydrology to fill a teaspoon. Tom didn't argue. That's how I knew it was serious. People are scared, and scared people point fingers. Around noon, I drove down the county road toward Crestview. The closer I got, the worse it looked. Mud caked the sidewalks. And then I saw her, Brenda Sterling, HOA president, standing in the middle of the road in rain boots that had never seen real mud before. She was waving her arms, pointing at the creek, pointing downstream, and then pointing upstream, meaning she was pointing directly at me. Even from the truck, I could read her lips. It came from there. She didn't look like a woman surprised by a flood. She looked like a woman who'd been waiting for someone to blame. I didn't get out. I just took in the scene, turned the truck around, and headed back home. Because right then I knew two things. The flood wasn't my doing, and Brenda Sterling wasn't done with me. By the next morning, the sky was clear, too clean, too innocent for what it was covering up. The creek was calmer now, like it was exhausted. I was fixing the latch on my corral when I heard a sound that didn't belong on my land. The crunch of expensive tires on gravel. A white Lexus eased up my driveway, chrome flashing. The door opened with a little hiss, and out stepped a man who looked allergic to dust. Gray suit, slicked back hair, holding a leather folder like it contained nuclear launch codes. "Mr. Hoggard," he asked, voice smooth, polite, and fake as a $3 steak. "That's me," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "Sir, I'm here on behalf of the Crestview Heights Homeowners Association." I let out a slow breath. "Well, that explains the Lexus." He handed me a thick envelope, then stepped back like it might explode. I tore it open, pulled out the paperwork, and the first thing I saw was the amount printed in bold letters. $2,800,000. Payable to Crestview Heights HOA. I started laughing. A full belly laugh that echoed across the yard. "You people have lost your damn minds. This is a formal request for settlement," he said, blinking. "The HOA holds you responsible for the recent flood damage, citing failure to maintain modern water control structures on your riverfront." "My riverfront," I repeated, folding the check in half. "Son, that river is older than your whole neighborhood. I don't own it. I don't control it. And I sure as hell don't dam it." He cleared his throat. "The HOA has determined that the initial breach occurred along your property line. Therefore, you may be liable under riparian responsibility statutes." I cut him off. "Do you even know what riparian law is?" He opened his mouth. Don't answer that. I can see the answer on your shoes. If you sign the enclosed release form and remit payment within 15 business days, he read from the page, the HOA will waive further legal action. Let me get this straight, I said, stepping closer. Your HOA builds houses on a floodplain, narrows the natural channel, ignores state water reports, gets hit by the flood every map said was coming, and I'm the one who's supposed to fix your mistake. He swallowed. I'm only here to deliver the documents. No, I said. You're here so Brenda Sterling doesn't have to. She wants to use a fancy suit and a Lexus to make her accusation look official. I tucked the paperwork into my back pocket and gave him the kind of smile my dad used to give slick salesmen. Tell your boss, I said. She'll need a better story than this. You'd think after dropping off a $2.8 million bill, the HOA would give me a day to breathe. But nope. Brenda Sterling runs on drama. The very next morning, the gossip had already outrun the mail truck. I went to the feed store, and the air was different. People still nodded, but they didn't hold eye contact. Then I saw why. The front page of the Valley Ledger. Headline, Negligence Upstream. Local landowner may have worsened flood impact. HOA says. I scanned it. Brenda Sterling had written a column of polished, lawyer-scented nonsense. According to her, I had failed to modernize the waterway, my outdated land practices contributed to uncontrolled runoff, and I had shown a long-standing disregard for community safety. She'd gotten ahead of the truth. Out here, speaking first matters. On the way home, a woman I'd known for 20 years gave me a tight-lipped smile. People are talking. Yeah, I said. That's the thing about people. When I pulled into my driveway, someone had left a copy of the paper on my door. Brenda's column was circled in red ink, and underneath, scribbled in shaky handwriting. Explain yourself. Explain myself? Sure. But I'd explain myself in front of someone who mattered. Not to a newspaper, and definitely not to Brenda Sterling. If they wanted the truth, they were going to get it, but they were going to get it my way. I called Grant Lockage. Grant isn't your usual attorney. He's not slick, but he has a brain sharp enough to peel the paint off a courthouse. He'd torn the HOA apart years ago when they complained about my tractor noise. It's Daniel, I said. He sighed. All right. What did the HOA do this time? I told him everything. The Lexus, the $2.8 million demand, the newspaper article. Daniel, Grant said slowly. I say this with all the love in the world. Your HOA neighbors are idiots. Riparian law doesn't work like that. They can't make you responsible for water that doesn't belong to you. Send me everything, he ordered. The documents, the article, and that nonsense check. I want to frame that thing. All right, here's the plan, he said, speaking with that calm precision he only uses when he smells blood. I'm filing an information request with the Wyoming Department of Water Resources. I'm requesting floodplain maps, historical bank conditions, and any alterations made within the last decade. That'll take weeks, I said. 3 days, Grant replied. I know a guy who owes me a favor. Then he asked the crucial question. Anything at all seem odd before the flood? Unusual noise, activity, machinery, anything that didn't feel right. I hesitated. Well, there was the boom. Silence on the line. What kind of boom? The kind that rattles windows. Grant swore softly. Daniel, if that wasn't thunder, you might be dealing with something a hell of a lot worse than negligence. I'm saying that flood didn't happen to Crestview. Someone might have helped it happen. Grant showed up the next morning, handing me a breakfast burrito and a stack of printed documents. This, he said, tapping the top paper, is where the HOA's story falls apart. He showed me the official floodplain map, and then the HOA's version. They had forged it, shaving off nearly 30 yards of state-designated high-risk floodland, where they built homes and patios. Then he pulled up a file he'd obtained through his favor. Someone had deleted a bank renovation variance request that had been flagged for technical review, meaning someone with admin access was covering their tracks. Look at this topographical comparison, he said. The natural curve of the riverbank didn't match the new version. It was funneled inward, scraped away like someone used a bulldozer. Narrowing a river channel increases flow velocity, Grant explained. In a flood scenario, it turns the creek into a pressure hose pointed right at the lowest point in the valley. And the lowest point is Crestview Heights. Then he found the construction invoices. The HOA had canceled flood protection, bank reinforcement, and reallocated the budget to an Eastgate beautification initiative, flower beds, and decorative lighting. He showed me the final smoking gun. An internal HOA memo, underlined twice. If a major water event occurs, we must establish upstream negligence immediately to protect Crestview's liability position. They were planning the blame game before the storm even hit, Grant said. This is a cover-up. Grant and I met with Elena Ward, PE, the hydraulic engineer Karen had hired, then fired, after Elena warned them their bank modifications were dangerous. They didn't even have common sense, Elena said, pointing to her original assessment. The decorative retaining blocks and narrowed bend made the bank primed to fail. Karen told her she lacked vision, and her recommendations were too expensive. Then I asked her about the boom. Elena didn't hesitate. I heard it. It wasn't thunder. It was metal striking rock, something heavy, maybe machinery, hitting an already weakened bank. A strike in the right place, and the storm would do the rest. This flood wasn't a surprise, she concluded. It was predicted. And Crestview didn't just ignore the risk. They magnified it. Karen chose appearance over safety. Back at the ranch, we retrieved my trail cam from the cottonwoods. Grant loaded the SD card. He clicked the video from 11:52 p.m. the night of the storm. Even through the grainy rain, there was movement. 3 figures hooded in rain ponchos hunched near the bank where it narrowed. Grant zoomed in. A flash of lightning revealed the tool, a post-hole digger, meant to punch through packed soil. Grant's voice was flat. Daniel, they were digging. Then the camera caught it. The sharp, heavy impact. The deep, blunt report that rattled even through the microphone. Boom. The 3 figures jumped back, startled, then scattered. Grant moved to the next clip. Headlights appeared on the ridge. A figure stepped out. Umbrella, long coat, standing perfectly still, looking down toward the creek. Even through grainy pixels, the posture was unmistakable. Karen Winters. Watching. Supervising. Making sure the job was done right. So that's it, I said, my voice slow and steady. They weakened the bank on purpose on my property line, made sure the pressure would give way, then waited for the storm to finish the job. They weaponized the creek and then blamed you, Grant said. They used my land to cause the damage, I said. Then hit me with a $2.8 million bill for the disaster they created. We're going to bury them with this. The town council called an emergency meeting. Brenda Sterling stormed in, trying to push the lawsuit through, waving charts and blaming upstream negligence. Grant stood, calm as granite. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Everything you've just heard is missing one important ingredient, the truth. The waterway isn't his. It's a public water course. But the HOA did alter it. Grant dimmed the lights. The trail cam footage filled the wall. The room went dead silent. Rain, dark figures, the post-hole digger, the boom, and then the figure stepping out. Someone in the back whispered, "No way." Brenda shot up. "That footage is doctored. This is outrageous." Grant raised a hand. "Sit down." And she did. Grant pointed at the screen. "That's your HOA president supervising the deliberate weakening of a natural bank. A bank Elena Ward explicitly warned them not to touch." Elena stepped forward, confirming the altered floodplain maps. "Daniel Hoggard didn't cause your flood," Grant concluded. "Your own leadership did." Then they blamed the nearest man because lies travel faster than responsibility. The room erupted. Karen tried one last time to stand, but the treasurer beside her grabbed her arm. She looked cornered, defeated. The council chair quickly tabled the matter. The ultimate end came swiftly. The board members resigned in clusters. The county attorney's office, receiving our evidence, including internal emails showing malicious intent and planning the blame game, took over the case. In Judge Groves's chambers, the judge dismissed the $2.8 million lawsuit with prejudice, meaning it could never be refiled. She looked at Brenda Sterling, whose face had gone white. "This is no longer a question of negligence. This is malicious intent." By evening, the sheriff picked up Brenda. Misuse of funds, falsified records, obstructing an investigation. A week later, Mr. Mallister, the old man who once glared at me, came to my door. "We believed her," he said, handing me a jar of homemade peach preserves. "Because sometimes certainty is louder than truth. We know better now." Grant and I held the creek truth gathering. Neighbors brought food, kids played. Before sunset, Grant and I set up a simple wooden post near the creek. He held the sign while I drove the nails in. The sign read, "Rivers don't lie. People do." I walked to the river's edge. Bear Creek whispered softly over the stones, same as it always had. The land was still mine, still steady, still worth fighting for. And for the first time in a long, rough season, the valley felt clean again. So, what do you think was Brenda's worst mistake? Forging the flood maps, or thinking she could outsmart a man who listens to his land? Have you ever dealt with an HOA trying to blame you for something completely outside your control? Drop your story in the comments below, and if you believe the truth always rises, give this video a like and subscribe.